And blessed to be a part of your day. Kevin Miller in the morning here. Coming up, we'll speak with Peyton and Max. First, we go to Gabrielle Boucher joining us from the Millennial Solution to talk a little CPAC and young people in the state of the Republic. Good morning.
Hey, good morning. Thanks for having me.
So, for those of us that are not millennials, you're an expert in communicating with the people of your people, your ilk, if you will. How do we effectively communicate with millennials?
Yeah, our people.
Hold on. That was intended as a joke.
You strategically distance yourself. No, I don't. It's not popular being a millennial. I really don't. I don't give you a hard time for that at all. But and keep in mind, millennials are born between 1981 and 2000. So the older millennial is about 37 years old right now. So we're not necessarily just talking about college students. But when it comes to millennials, just coming off of CPAC, it was really interesting. I mean, every year, probably my 7th year going to CPAC, there's always those young people. But what was really interesting was kind of the tail end of the discussion coming from President Trump's address, which his, kind of spirited, really colorful presentation, which of course we all appreciated. But he warned the conservative movement and the Republican Party that if you aren't active, if you become complacent, we're going to lose 2018 and 2020 is in jeopardy. And I certainly saw that, particularly amongst the young people who were there, that we felt a certain charge, so to speak, to make sure that we don't sit on our loins.
Well, indeed, and people give millennials a hard time, but on the other hand, I would have to say your cohort, your generation, is the most challenging to be moral, the most challenging to be conservative. Do you agree with that statement, Gabrielle?
Yeah, you bet. And you're right. It's not popular to be a millennial. And sometimes I think that that's somewhat deserved. I mean, millennials are now actually the largest part of the voting bloc. We're the largest part of the workforce. Just last year, we became the largest part of the consumer market. So we are a massive generation and one that is full of challenges as well as full of opportunities. And so it really does come down to, particularly those in politics who are looking to engage with my generation, is to focus on two things: authenticity and transparency. My generation wants to know how it's made, they want to know how they're involved, and they want to know that you don't know all the answers.
Well, indeed. So let's talk a little bit about CPAC. What was it like for those of us that maybe heard about it or watched it on television or something, some newfangled thing called streaming?
Yeah, all the technology. CPAC was great. I mean, it was a packed house, kind of as usual. But again, I think there was almost this soberness in the air of realizing that we have had such an immense victory, but we can't let that really cause us to relax in our efforts. I mean, in the years past, when we've been in an Obama administration, there was kind of this overwhelming of excitement of, we're going to do it, we're going to win back the White House. Well, we've won. And now it really, as we're moving into these midterm elections, I think it really is going to be on all of us in the grassroots movement to make sure that we are able to maintain this majority and actually get some really important legislation passed.
Well, let's take a look at it. What's at stake and what legislation needs to be passed, and where do we go from here?
Yeah, one of the big discussion points that we were having at CPAC is really around student loan reform. As someone who is extremely interested in my generation, getting my generation excited about conservative principles in the free market, we've been talking to people about what does that look like to create essentially a student loan reform package that is going to counteract the Democratic narrative. We've already seen them dangle student loan forgiveness, whether that was Bernie Sanders, Hillary Clinton even started to talk about it during the last election. And we know 2018 and especially 2020, my generation is going to be promised all the free things to make sure that you really capture that millennial vote. So that's one of our big initiatives we're working on right now with a number of stakeholders, is how do you create a private sector solution that essentially creates the employer's incentive to keep the millennial around by helping young people and anyone, frankly, who has student loan debt pay off their debt faster rather than it causing to balloon and really delay a lot of the things like getting married, having kids, buying a house, the things that are really stalling our economy.
I'm with you, but how do you counteract the progressive narrative and many folks, and Gabrielle, please correct me here at KIDO Talk Radio, that all the millennials or the majority are down with the socialism and not down with the capitalism. How do you counteract that narrative? How do you counteract that thinking?
Yep, pretty easily. So millennials do vote for Democrats 2-1, but young people voting for Democrats is nothing new. What's interesting, though, and frankly, I think a bright, shining, more than just a glimmer of hope for my generation is the fact my generation doesn't associate with being Democrat or Republican. We're actually the first generation in the last century who's actually said, I'd prefer to be called an independent than a Democrat or Republican. Also, too, if you ask millennials if they prefer the free market or government-run market factors, they overwhelmingly say the free market. But when you ask them about capitalism versus socialism, they say socialism because, of course, we went to institutions of higher education where this idea of capitalism was bad or dirty or the 1% was something to be frowned upon. And so we really are fighting a phrase war right now. We need to help my generation understand what the free market is, what it means to start your own business, what it means to have the ability to the income mobility that every generation wants and, frankly, that we expect. And so it's going to come down to those of us, as well as those in the Trump administration, to better articulate what a millennial American dream really looks like and feels like.
Well, Gabrielle, if people want more information on the Millennial Solution, we'd love to have you back. What can they do?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on. They can learn more and get some of our free resources on how to reach, retain, and market to millennials at our website, millennialsolution.com.
Stay out of trouble, would you?
I can't promise anything.
Yes, ma'am. You have a great day.
Thanks for having me on.
All right, Gabrielle Boucher joining us. Kevin Miller in the morning here. Phone numbers 580-5436, 580-KIDO.
Privatized selling to be completely reformed, so you can't just walk into a building with $130 and walk out with an AR-15.
Yes, sir. I'd like to buy an AR-15.
And there we have it. We have people debating whether or not you should be 18 or 21 to buy an AR-15. Let's go to Peyton, who's been very patient. Young Conservatives of Idaho with Kevin Miller at KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning. Peyton? Max, alive and well. Good morning. You're on with Kevin Miller at KIDO Talk Radio.
Good morning, Guy. It's good to be home. Hospital beds are not as comfortable as my Serta sleeper.
Well, you made it through the surgery.
Yeah, that was the big one. And everything else is fluff, little things. It's a good feeling. And I lost 11 pounds on the table. That's not bad. Fastest diet I ever had.
Wow.
Well, buddy, listen, I've been listening to the show this morning. I haven't heard you for a while either. If they want to make it age 21 to buy a long gun, why don't we also go back to age 21 to vote?
Well,
I'm sure think about it. How many 18-year-olds do you know that are really savvy enough to be allowed to vote?
Well, look, this show does exceptionally well with the younger demographics, so I'm not going to try and antagonize them.
Well, I will say this. The young people in the millennial generation, most of the folks, and I mix with a lot of them, and most of them are pretty solid kids. They got their heads on straight. Like that woman said earlier, Ms. Boucher, they do tend to want to identify themselves as being independent when it comes to voting. Most of them I talked to were just so frustrated in the last election because they didn't want to vote for Trump, but they really, really didn't want to vote for Clinton. And Bernie Sanders scared most of them half to death. They saw a metamorphosis to a new Beijing.
Back to raising the age. Do you support that or not?
Well, I think it's a toy. I think they're putting it out there to keep stupid people happy. This guy who was 19 years old, fine. But how many people are older than that? And what if he decides, well, I'll get a gun illegally. I'll buy it on the street. They don't ask for ID. It's already illegal to buy it for a family. I can't go in now and buy a gun for my wife or buy a gun for my son. When they ask questions, on the background thing, you fill out this form. And one of the questions is, are you buying this for anybody else? You're not going to get the gun. There's far too much gun legislation already. But I guess what makes me nuts is, we'll just raise it to 21. So what? They're throwing a bone out to people who are too stupid to realize that's what it is. It's a bone. And I'm disappointed in Mr. Trump in that he is budging at all on this matter.
Max, don't be a stranger anymore, all right?
I sure won't, buddy. It's good to be back on the radio with you.
All
Take
right.
care.
And Max,
Yes, sir.
you're on with Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio.
Absolutely. AM and FM, Boise and Tampa.
Take care. Peyton, good morning. You're on with Kevin Miller at KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Sorry about that. I thought you were going to be on with that other woman for a little bit longer. So I just wanted to talk about a little bit about the raising the age. I think the last gentleman said it well. It is a bone getting thrown to some of the easier pleased people. In reality, people can't take it seriously when you say on one side, people aren't mature enough to hold a weapon until they're 21. On the other side, come sign to defend our country at 17 years old, we'll throw a weapon in the hand to kill the enemy, but you can't do it when you're on our own country. Doesn't make sense. So there's a couple other things that I wanted to talk on that. People it always comes back to banning high capacity mags and ARs. And people, when they think of that, they need to realize that whether it's a invasion of a foreign enemy or you believe that our government's corrupt, whether one of the two, our last line of defense is going to be an AR. And you don't want to take that out of the hands of our people until you really do feel safe and there would never be a need for anything other than hunting. Yeah, an AR's purpose is to kill humans, but killing humans is how you defend against a human trying to kill you. It doesn't take a genius to figure that out. Why don't and then the other thing is people need to realize, why is it common practice to punish the masses for the actions of the few when it comes to guns? But when it comes to any other issue, it's the complete opposite. Especially when it might offend a certain group of people. Like, I don't know, everyone knows that. The other thing that I wanted to talk about is millennials. I think millennials and liberals get easily confused, and a lot of people think that a lot of the millennials are just liberals. There's a lot of conservative-minded, smart young people out there. Like he said, it's 37 is the oldest millennial. There's a lot of millennials out there that are great people, and there's a lot of – it's just like any other generation. I think we need to remove the wedge between the young and the old because that's the most valuable bond we have.
No,
anyway,
I totally,
Peyton,
I agree with you. And, I've come a long way because I used to be the old codger saying, well, these kids have it easy today. No, the millennials have it the toughest because of the overwhelming push of progressivism, of socialism, of frankly, 8 years of Obama, and before that, 8 years of a not-so-conservative President Bush.
That's well said. That is very well said. Thank you.
True. Thank you. Take care, Peyton.
All right, well, you have a good one.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye. John in Caldwell, thanks for your patience. You're on with Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio. Hey, John.
Good morning, Kevin. Yeah. Hey, a lot of people are talking about, how long ago the first school shooting was. Personally, to me, it's kind of personal. It's 1989. I think it was January in California, Stockton, California. Patrick Purdy got an AK-47 in a Stockton schoolyard and killed 5 kids. California laws at that time restricted him from buying a gun. He went to now the People's Republic. Before it was the People's Republic of Oregon, but now he wouldn't be able to get it there. But he had to go to Oregon to purchase the weapon. He came down there and shot people because he was denied the purchase of an AK-47. Huge debate, because I was there at that time. Huge debate over what to do. They wanted background checks and 15-day waiting period. I don't know if anybody remembers the 15-day waiting period. It was instituted in the next year or a year and a half. However, fast forward to, I think it was November of 91, you got to see 4 Jerry's Boat People kids. One was 21, 19, 17, were all 3 brothers, and then a friend was 17 years old. All 4 of them went in to purchase handguns. They went through the supposed background check, 15-day. On the 15th day, they picked them up and they went to the good guy store. And there in the middle of the night, you got to see my uncle get shot right in the face in front of the whole world, as well as 17 people died. 3 of them were 3 of the 4 were killed and 14 other people as he ran across in front of the windows and watched him get shot. That's kind of personal to me. The point that came out of that, with the 15-day waiting period to give the Sacramento County Sheriff time to background check these people, they didn't do it. 2 of them had felons. The others had misdemeanors. I think 3 of them had their driver's license revoked. There was no way they should have possibly been able to purchase a weapon under existing laws in California at that time. But once again, the county sheriff did not do their job of background check. I don't believe raising the age is going to change anything because I'm not a criminal. My kids are not criminals. My grandchildren are not criminals. They're not going to do that. I grew up with guns, and so have all my kids and grandkids. It's that simple. A criminal is a criminal. It's not going to change anything. And that's my speech. The rest is history from there. It's gone downhill ever since. It's not going to change anything, brother.
Sorry for your loss, John.
Yeah, that's cool. But, I mean, you know what happens? He didn't die. Actually, my uncle was one of the survivors. 17 people were killed. He was one of the people that survived. He got lucky, hit him in the jawbone instead of in the head like other people, and splintered into 3 pieces right above his heart. And my uncle survived. He died at a ripe old age of 80-something years old. You know what I'm saying? But many people, they took 42 hostages, but they waited. The entire waiting period was done, and the background check didn't happen. And was it Sandy Hook a few years ago when they were interviewing the sheriff in Congress, and he says, what about the background checks? And the sheriff replies, we don't do the background checks until someone does something wrong. Well, what was the purpose of the background check before he purchased the weapon? My point, Kevin, here is everybody out there listening on the radio knows this. We have laws to prevent this stuff, but the government is preventing the citizens from protecting ourselves from this type of thing. Anyway, that's my 2 cents, sort of, maybe 3.5, something like that.
Well, John, thank you for calling and listening to KIDO Talk Radio. Appreciate you.
You betcha, bro. You hang in there. Have a good day. God bless you.
Bye-bye. Coming up next, God bless you, John. Liberty Linda and your calls. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. And Kevin Miller in the morning. The governor of Washington State has urged the president to drop his call to arm teachers, saying some educators did not want the responsibility. Here you have the governor of Kentucky responding.
Who volitionally would want to and would be willing to be an alternative to seeing children slaughtered in gun-free zones, which is what we now have in schools.
Let's go to Liberty Linda with Kevin Miller at KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Liberty Linda.
Yes, good morning, Kevin. You know, I believe like Bob and Patriot Ray, you know, I just remembered when I was a young girl, my cousins, myself, and good friends, we would go out for target practice. And we did it just to learn how to shoot for our own protection. You know, the older ones amongst us would teach the younger ones, and everyone in our group was very polite to one another. They knew that we were learning this for protection only. They wouldn't hurt a flea, and they had great respect for human life. You know, and we were all very thankful for this beautiful republic that our founding fathers gave us. We knew it was a republic, and we loved our founding fathers. And then I was also thinking, Kevin, don't our young men go to war at the age of 18 here? Is it still at the age of 18?
Right. Yes, ma'am.
So if they can defend our country at the age of 18, then I would think that it would be all right for them to have a rifle or a gun at the age of 18. But we need to teach our children better that only for protection. And,
well,
you know,
I think what we're doing is taking away the right to protect ourselves.
Correct. We have many wonderful individuals at the age of 18 that knows the difference, that knows, you know, you need to handle a gun with respect and understand what it is, and it's only for protection. And to anyway, that's what I believe. And I'm sorry for other children that we have out there that perhaps have learned other things. How can we reach them? How can we know who they are that don't understand these things? How do we reach them?
Well, that is our mission, is it not?
Yes, it is. And through your program, it's a big help. And we love your program, being able to call in. And you know, I just love the people that call in. You have some of the greatest people here in Idaho and common sense people here in Idaho. And that's one thing I love about Idaho. It's wonderful people here.
And you lead the pack, Liberty Linda.
Pardon me? I lead the pack?
You lead the pack when we're talking wonderful people here.
Yeah, we you know, well, it's just common sense and respect for human life and respect for one another. And I've met so many good people up here, and that's what they believe in.
Sure.
And so, anyway, that's wonderful. And they're all over our country as well, everywhere. I've met them all over in many states, just down-to-earth, great people here in the United States. And just love those people, don't we?
We do, Liberty Linda. God bless.
You as well, Kevin. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Traffic and weather together. And Kevin Miller in the morning. Our time is 8:31. Let's find out what's happening in your world. Good morning, Maggie.
Good morning.
And blessed to be a part of your day. Coming up, we'll talk more about raising the legal age to buy an AR-15, more about arming teachers, more of your phone calls. We're waiting for John Decker to join us exclusively from the White House. President Trump saying yesterday that he would have gone in empty-handed. And we'll get your thoughts on that. Many people disagree with him. We have that on my personal Facebook page, Kevin Miller. But I got to tell you, I believe the president. I think that the president would have gone in there and done it. Of course, people calling him names and such, I don't really get it. I don't get it at all. It doesn't really expand the dialogue or the discourse. Joining us now to discuss, our great friend from Fox News Radio, exclusively from the White House, John Decker. John, good morning.
Hey, good morning, Kevin. How are you doing today?
Always enjoy when you get called on at the White House press briefings. I think I can't remember. I know it was last week. I've failed you. I can't remember the specific question, but you're always getting the questions in. A very different response rate as opposed to when Josh Earnest was there.
Very much so. Yeah, it's, and what happens with Sarah Sanders as opposed to Josh is that she over the course of just 20 minutes, chooses more people for questions than Josh did in the span of an hour and 15 minutes, which is just the way that she goes about conducting her briefings. Same thing with Raj Shah, who subbed for her last week when Sarah was part of that delegation that traveled to South Korea.
Indeed. So the president hosting the governors, making some statements yesterday that we've been talking about here at KIDO Talk Radio. Anything else come out of this big meeting with the nation's governors?
Well, I think you got a sense that the president is leaning towards certain things as it relates to trying to stop those mass shootings that we saw in Las Vegas and just 2 weeks ago in South Florida. The president saying that if Congress does not ban those so-called bump stocks, then he will take that action by executive action. So that's something we learned new yesterday. The president's still advocating for the idea of arming well-trained teachers in our nation's schools. Of course, that idea is something that can only be done at the local level. It can't be a federal mandate of any kind. So you're unlikely to see anything come out of that from Washington lawmakers.
Any thoughts on the budget or, the infrastructure? I know that seems quaint to speak about that in light of what has happened in Parkland and the growing debate on guns and safety, but are people getting back to business at all, or will gun legislation pretty much dominate for the next couple weeks?
Well, gun legislation, or the idea of gun legislation, certainly has dominated since that horrific mass shooting in Parkland, Florida. Lawmakers just came back from their recess yesterday, so this is something that will certainly be a legislative item that they will take up. There's already a bill in the Senate put forward by a Republican and a Democrat, so it's bipartisan support. We'll see if that goes anywhere. There's no companion bill for that, however, in the U.S. House, and the bill that we're talking about would tighten background checks. That's something the president has advocated in all three of those listening sessions here at the White House.
John Decker joining us here on KIDO Talk Radio. John, it was interesting to hear what the president had to say yesterday concerning taking on the NRA. You don't really hear a Republican president say those things.
No, you don't. And the president said, look, there's some times when he'll take positions that will be at odds with what the NRA has put forward. Remember, the president is representing the entire country, the NRA obviously just representing its members. And the president on Sunday had lunch with Wayne LaPierre, who leads the NRA, a lunch with Wayne LaPierre and also Chris Koch, two leaders of the NRA here at the White House. And I believe that, during that conversation, the president indicated to them two things that he'd like to see Washington do as it relates to making our schools safer. One is tightening background checks, and the other one is banning bump stocks. And my guess is that the NRA said, well, that's fine with us. That's the reason why the president told the nation's governors yesterday, there were about 40 of them here at the White House, that sometimes, not sometimes, but the NRA, he said, is on our side. I think that's what he is referencing.
John Decker, we always appreciate you. Hope you have a great day, sir.
You too, Kevin. Have a great day. Thank you so much.
Our great friend John Decker joining us. Let's go to Tea Party Bob, publisher of the Gem State Patriot, with Kevin Miller at KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Kevin. How are you today?
Living the dream and once again trying to make sense of a nonsensical world.
Very, very difficult, isn't it? All these people that you've had on that want to take the AR-15s away or ban them are going to find that it will not make a difference in the long run. As if a killer wants to obtain an assault weapon, they're going to find a way, even if by illegal means. Even the gun ban from 94 to 2004 had little or no effect on killing, especially with assault weapons. The problem starts with how and what we teach our children. Here we allow God and prayer to be taken out of our schools, but we expect our children to obey God's laws. We teach our children that it's okay for pregnant women to abort a child. What are we telling our kids with these messages? This is a societal and mental health problem, and it is society that must deal with it, not the gun owners of America. The liberal progressive has spawned this behavior in our children through their misguided educational process in what we teach our children. Isn't it time they took some of the responsibility for what is happening? Didn't they load the kids with lies and misconceptions? Maybe it's time to unload the kids, not the guns, with a better environment and bring God back into our schools and stop teaching them that it's okay to kill babies with abortion. That's about all I have to say, my friend.
Well, let me get your reaction to this, if you don't mind.
Go right ahead.
All right. Just loading up the old audio here. Hopefully we can get that rolling at KIDO Talk Radio. And you heard that throughout the day where the president was saying that he would go in empty-handed, right?
Right.
What do you make of that?
What would you do? It's a personal question. What would you do?
Well, here's the president.
I believe you don't know until you test it, but I think I really believe I'd run in there even if I didn't have a weapon. And I think most of the people in this room would have done that too, because I know most of you. But the way they performed was really a disgrace. I had lunch with Wayne LaPierre, Chris Cox, and David Lehman of the NRA. And I want to tell you, they want to do something. And I said, fellas, we got to do something. It's too long now. We got to do something. And we're going to do very strong background checks. Very strong. We've got to do background checks. If we see a sicko, I don't want him having a gun. And, I know there was a time when anybody could have. I mean, even if they were sick, they were fighting. And I said, fellas,
Your thoughts?
I've had guns pointed at me 3 times in my life, and I've been shot at once. And that's all been in cities. It hasn't been was not in some proverbial case where there's a robbery or something going on. And I have to tell you, if I had a gun, I would probably have defended myself. If I thought I could have shot the guy, I could have been killed 3 times. And God didn't let it happen to me, so I guess he wants me around for a little while yet. But I think you have to think to yourself, are you going to protect these kids or are you not going to protect these kids? And how could you not do that?
Well, you have some people that say they'd rather be shot than...
Well, no, you have some stupid people who would rather be shot. I mean, who wants to be shot? That's the dumbest thing I ever heard of. Nobody wants to be shot, including me.
Well,
but
right.
You have to take the time to think about it, even yourself. I mean, I would think, geez, I'm going to save these kids. I've got to do something. I mean, even if you throw a chair at the bum. That's one of the reasons we need to have these protections. We need to have people that are armed. If you can't shoot back, you're at a disadvantage no matter where you are.
Right. You're right. But again, I think you have a lot of people in our society that are living in an ideal world and not living in a real world.
They're not living in a real world. If they were living in a real world, they wouldn't have the problems, and we wouldn't have the problems we have today. Like I said, it's society. It's not the guns. The guns have absolutely nothing to do with it. It's people who kill people, not guns who kill people. Change the environment. Change the way we teach our children. You'll see no more of this in the next 10 or 20 years. But they're not going to do that because they have an agenda, and that's unfortunate. Hopefully we have enough kids that are homeschooled.
Our great friend, Tea Party Bob, we appreciate you, sir.
Thank you, sir. You have a great day.
You too, our great friend, Tea Party Bob. By the way, Jim Acosta decided to attack Sarah Sanders concerning Donald Trump, saying he would have saved the day.
Later this week. We'll take one last question, Jim.
When the president said earlier today that he would have run into the school, was he suggesting that he could have saved the day?
I think he was just stating that as a leader, he would have stepped in and hopefully been able to help as a number of the individuals that were in the school, the coach and other adults, and even a lot of the students stepped up and helped protect other students. I think the point he was making is that he would have wanted to have played a role in that as well.
Just follow up on that. Is he trained in firing a weapon? Is he trained in using a handgun or a firearm of some sort?
I don't know how people keep a straight face with this. Donald Trump said something that every American that saw that go down wanted to say. Whether we do it or not, who knows? He said he would go in, contrary to the Broward County deputy that didn't. And now we have this guy. Is he trained? Does he have superpowers? Is he Tony Stark? Is he Batman?
That was the point he was making. He was saying that he would be a leader and would want to take a courageous action. And a lot of the individuals that helped protect others that day weren't carrying firearms, which I think shows that you can be helpful in that process without it.
We're worried that if you have a lot of people inside these schools with weapons, that this could turn into a situation like the Wild West. What would you...
Right. We wouldn't want people firing back. Now, that's really the argument that we're hearing about against arming teachers, about arming guards, disarming criminals, is we wouldn't want it to be like the Wild West where you had a chance. Coming up, one person says she'd rather be shot than defend herself with a weapon. Tell you about it next. We'll take more of your phone calls. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio.
Glenn Beck is next. Now, back to Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM and 580 AM.
When will this war is peace, freedom is slavery, ignorance is strength die?
Anybody that says they don't know if they could shoot somebody hasn't been in a violent confrontation and hasn't seen the results of it.
If you make the signs big enough that says gun-free zone, then obviously those people that are going to go in there and kill people, they'll go, oh, I can't do that. That's a gun-free zone.
I agree with the president. Just because somebody reaches 18 does not mean you should have a license to just buy anything.
Hollywood wants to glorify nothing but violence and sex.
and just pumps it out year after year.
Why do you need this for hunting, and why do you need this for that? Those people that have to keep asking that question might as well move to a socialistic or communistic country.
When you have a government who decides that the people are not trustworthy enough to be armed, they're becoming a tyrannical government, and they need to be shut down.
There we have it. We always appreciate your take. Kevin Miller in the morning here. Thank you, Ray Amaya. Phone numbers 580-5436, 580-KIDO. And, earlier today we were having people going back and forth on whether or not teachers should be armed. And I sit there and think about this, and I think that's up to each individual teacher when we examine this. And, of course, the president is raising the debate and raising the dialogue, and I think that's important, right? Of course, we have folks that say that, we shouldn't do this. We should just take a breath and, allow laws to do that. Well, isn't that an idyllic way of dealing with things? And, again, there's the real world, and then there's how it is. Case in point, you had a conversation on The View, and people were talking about whether or not teachers should be armed at 580-5436, 580-KIDO.
For a second, because I was a teacher. I believe you don't want me to have a gun.
Yeah. Well, my mother's a teacher, my aunt is a teacher, and I don't. Their job is not to be gun wielders. They're supposed to be teaching our children. I know. Somebody said something.
Now, wait for it. This is something that I've been teasing for a while, and here's the payoff on KIDO Talk Radio.
Yesterday, the CNN or wherever it was, both of those things that I thought was very interesting. One of the teachers said, I don't want to be responsible to have to shoot someone. I mean, it's bad to get shot, but to shoot someone, I don't know if I could live with that.
And actually, I think the teacher who said it, I'm blanking out on her name, but there's a teacher there who is a gun owner who was at Parkland.
Yes.
There we have it. Well, Joy, with all due respect, I don't think you'll be around if you got shot. And really, it comes down to kill or be killed if you're a hunter or you're sheep, right? Not making light of the argument, but you have people that are very influential saying they would rather be shot than have the ability to defend themselves. I don't think that you would agree with that when it comes to you, yourself, or your children or grandchildren, right? More on that in a minute. 580-5436, 580-KIDO. Traffic and weather together. And we continue on. Let's go to Dwight in Boise with Kevin Miller at KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Dwight.
Good morning, Kevin. Kevin, I want to say something similar to what I've said on your air before. Donald Trump is one person. We need to be backing him up. And we need to be backing him up by saying something about the liberals that may shock even some conservatives, but it's the truth, and I'll be happy to debate anybody. The leaders of the liberals want the mass killings to continue. This is the way that they are ginning up the emotion to help them to achieve one of their ultimate goals, which is to disarm the American people. And we, as conservatives, need to be out in the streets and in front of media outlets and in other venues calling them on it. Donald Trump dares not say this, but it is the truth. I think he knows it's the truth. And this is one function that we can serve to win the debate. They do not want the teachers armed because that will be a huge step towards solving the problem. They don't want the problem solved. We need to call them on it.
Dwight, thank you for the call. Very valid point when we're talking about engagement. That's really what it comes down to, engagement. Coming up, Glenn Beck will join us. Then it will be Dave Ramsey. Then Sean Hannity will bring you home really insightful stuff from Sean concerning the Russian investigation and, of course, Sarah Carter and everything else. Go home with Sean. And, of course, if your commute is a little late, we have our great friend Lars Larson, who we hear from weekly here at KIDO Talk Radio. Lars from 6 to 9. Then it's our friend Clyde and then George. And then we start it all over again. Really, what scares me about this is the rush to judgment, the rush to do something, and the rush to use children as political pawns in this. Yes, we have some children that were there and that are actively thinking about it. And then you have others that are saying, well, it could happen here. Well, do we really want the kids being active politically? Shouldn't we leave that to the adults? Because the adults have the life experience. And let's face it, the adults are responsible for their families. When you're a kid, you're responsible, well, for your homework. Ray Maya, great job. Good day. God bless and keep the faith.